This is going to be a good one. I recently had the pleasure of interviewing Ross Rosenberg, an expert in narcissism, narcissistic personality disorder, and narcissistic abuse recovery.
My name is Ross Rosenberg. I'm a psychotherapist. I wrote the book, The Human Magnet Syndrome. I'm the owner of the Self-Love Recovery Institute company. I am considered an expert on narcissism, codependency, and the relationships that happen between the two. And I have developed a treatment program that solves, if not cures, codependency, or the term I created for it, self-love deficit disorder.
Now, this guy is one of the pioneers in the field of narcissism and narcissistic abuse recovery, and he has taught and spoken all over the world. In fact, he has a very important and very informative webinar coming up that is based on his extensive work in this field. So I'm going to link to that for you, as well as his book, in the description below. You'll hear more about that in the coming days. I'm going to present this interview in a series of videos, starting with this one. So in this video, we're going to discuss his observe, don't absorb technique. We're also going to discuss the human magnet syndrome, which is the title of his book, but it's also how Rosenberg explains why narcissists and codependents, or SLDs, are attracted to one another. Plus, we're going to talk about gaslighting and why narcissists do it. Now, be sure to subscribe if you haven't already so that you don't miss out on any of this important series. So let's go ahead and just get started. Tell me about the observe, not absorb technique that you created.
I'd love to tell you about the observe, don't absorb technique.
Thank you.
It was created without knowing what I was doing when I was in a relationship with a person with borderline personality disorder who was extremely abusive, who I realized, and this is 30 years ago, who I realized had all the power over me if she could trigger me and get me mad, because she, like any person with BPD, would get angry, hurt me, and then cycle back and become in love with me again. And so the best way that she could feel better is if she could make me as angry as she was. And once I realized this, I developed this technique to safely and in a healthy manner disassociate from the environment and the person who is trying to trigger me or activate me. The lesson comes from a George Bernard Shaw saying, which is never wrestle with pigs, you'll get dirty. And besides, the pig likes it. Yeah. And the point of that is the narcissist, when they want power over you, they want to get you into what I call their wrestling ring. And that is where they always are in control and they have all the power. And so once they get a reaction out of you, through many techniques, including induced conversation, the technique that I describe, you lose your power, because narcissists know how to fight. They know how to manipulate. They know how to guilt and shame. And SLD or codependent can never stand their own. So essentially, the observe, don't absorb technique is a way to safely disassociate from a narcissist who gains power by triggering your emotions and making you fight them in a fight that you can never win.
SLD, self-love deficient, is that right?
Yeah, so what I did, I never liked the term codependency because codependency is antiquated and it doesn't really mean anything anymore. So I decided to come up with a replacement term, and it took me a while to figure out, but ultimately it was self-love deficit disorder. And that's the problem, and the person is self-love deficient. So SLDD for the problem, SLD for the person. And the reason I came up with that was to help people understand that what they're suffering from not only has a name that fits the problem, but also gives you direction on what to solve in order to not have that problem anymore.
I've seen so many incorrect descriptions. I'm really interested in knowing what, if somebody says to you, I'm dealing with narcissistic abuse, I'm dealing with a narcissist, what does that really mean for you and from your perspective?
Well, the question deserves a half an hour answer, but I'll give you a 15-second one.
Thank you.
When I wrote my book, The Human Magnet Syndrome, it was incredibly important to me to make specific diagnoses so people knew what they were talking about. There's so many people out on the internet, YouTube, TikTok, everywhere that uses the term and they don't have mental health background. So I don't use the word narcissism. I use the word pathological narcissism. And these are individuals who have personality disorders as defined in the diagnostic statistic manual that are used by psychiatrists, psychotherapists, and psychologists. So I don't use the term narcissist to talk about someone because that's a description. Someone is being narcissistic. But when I say pathological narcissist, I'm talking about someone with a personality disorder who is harmful and is unable to understand or know what they're doing and perhaps they don't care, and they perpetrate harm on others. The term pathological narcissist refers to someone with borderline personality disorder, narcissistic personality disorder, or antisocial personality disorder. And therefore, when I use the word narcissist, I'm using a term that is a clinical explanation of a mental health disorder. And now there's little dispute on who's a narcissist or not, because therapists, doctors, professionals such as I cannot use a term unless they fit the diagnostic profile.
Thank you. That's really helpful. What about gaslighting? How would you define gaslighting and how would you deal with it?
So gaslighting is a term that comes from a play that became a movie in 1939, which is surprisingly accurate with Ingrid Bergman.
Yes.
Gaslighting is a manipulative ploy used by pathological narcissists who have sociopathic traits. In other words, they know what they're doing. They're not the garden variety narcissist who's oblivious to their narcissism. Gaslighting is a manipulative, systematically perpetrated strategy that pathological narcissists use in order to control and often hurt their victims. They do that by instilling a narrative, implanting a narrative about a person that something is wrong with them when nothing was, or something is very wrong with them with a problem they had that was originally mild. While by systematically manipulating the environment to prove their narrative, their victim eventually recognizes this fake narrative and identifies with the problem. As the gaslighter manipulates them to identify with the problem, he then builds a narrative that they are needy, unlikable, and would do better if they isolate. And the cherry on top of the gaslighting sundae is then the gaslighter portrays himself as the only one that loves, accepts, and will protect the victim. Therefore, the victim has taken on a psychological problem or disorder, feeling broken, unlovable, and encouraged to isolate, and then picking the person that has designed the whole plan, and then no one in their outside world, friends, family, or loved ones, can get them to try to bring them back to reality. And therefore, they are trapped, and sometimes forever trapped, by the scheming, sociopathic, gaslighting narcissist.
That was powerful, right? This series is only going to get better, so please make sure you stick with me. Now, if you're interested in learning about the signs of gaslighting or how to deal with it, I'm going to leave you some links in the pinned comment. Be sure to visit the links I'm leaving in the description below for more information on Ross Rosenberg, Self-Love Recovery Institute, the Human Magnet Syndrome, and the upcoming webinar. All right, now this brings me to the question of the day. And the question of the day is, had you ever heard of the Human Magnet Syndrome before? What about SLDD and SLDs? Have you heard of those? And could you relate to his points about gaslighting? Share your thoughts, share your ideas, share your experiences in the comment section below, and let's talk about it. As always, thank you so much for being a part of my day and a part of my life, and hey, thanks for letting me be a part of yours. It really does mean a lot to me. And before I go, make sure you take a look at the videos I'm going to leave for you right there and right there. And while you're here, hit the subscribe button right over there to subscribe to my channel, and the one right over there to subscribe to Ross Rosenberg's channel. I'll see you soon.